This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Monday, March the 4th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, and David Williams. He's producing the Monday program, so if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211, or elsewhere it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 86. 26, so let's have a look up in Regina at the 2024 Brier. Imagine if you're Team Mike McHugh, and of course from Saskatoon, but of course in their home province, look at the schedule, and inside the first three games, got to play four-time champion Kevin Cooey, five-time champion Brad Gujou, beat them both. It's the only loss suffered by Cooey and Gujou, so Gujou at 2-1, and a couple of games today. And Team Simmons, representing the province as the provincial tankard champions, 0-3, but they're in it. I mean, they lost on the last rock against Northern Ontario, so keep it going, boys. Let's see if we can knock off a couple of wins. And the national broadcasters, they're really soaking up that Alex Smith story. And of course, Alex Smith is the lead for Team Newfoundland and Labrador, and it's 35 years ago since he last appeared at the Brier, so they're enjoying that particular story. As am I. Pretty topsy-turvy weekend down at the Mary Brown Centre over the weekend with the Kalamazoo Wings in town. Kalamazoo beat the Growlers 6-0 or 4-0 on Friday night. The Growlers come back to beat them 6-0 on Saturday night, and then they lose 6-3 yesterday. So anyway, interesting weekend. And congratulations to all hands who participated in the last week's Newfoundland and Labrador Winter Games. Always a terrific event if you get the chance to participate, and or you're an organizer, volunteer, parent, whatever the case may be. So a couple of hiccups we're told, but overall, huge success. So to all of the athletes and the officials and the volunteers and the organizers, co-chairs Tara Pollard and Jeff Goldsworthy, bravo. You know, when you see some of the stories that have come from the games, they're really quite inspiring, to be honest with you. People were happy enough to share their stories of their son or daughter and their participation in the games and the time that they had at that week-long event out in Gander. So bravo to all hands involved. And of course, we sometimes forget about the officials, but they play a pretty key role. So St. John's North were the overall champions, win the Premier's Cup with the medal haul. They had 20. So they just outpaced Team Western, who were second place with 19. But congratulations to all hands. And we see that the National Special Olympics have wrapped up as well. Athletes from this province, some 70 strong, on their way home. Maybe some have already arrived. Some great stories coming from the National Games on that front as well. So congratulations and safe travels. One more in this one. So there's a cheerleading team from this province called Coastal Wave Elite Pulse. They won the gold and named the national champions in the Special Abilities Division at the 2024 Spirit Sports Cheer Competition, what happened this past weekend in Ottawa. Congratulations to you. And of course, these folks not in it for the money, in it for the love of the sport, right? And make some friends along the way and all of those important features of amateur sports, including absolutely inside the Special Olympics. But then you talk about the money in sport. At the time, the richest Major League Baseball contract in 1927 was signed by Babe Ruth, a 3-year deal, $70,000 per, of course, with the New York Yankees at the time. Just to extrapolate that through the amortization calculator that I use and to adjust for inflation, just an example of how much money is in sport today. The value of $70,000 in terms of purchasing power today is worth about $1.24 million, as opposed to some of the contracts we see in the neighborhood of $50 million, $70 million. Anyway, let's go. Good morning to the folks up in Labrador participating in Cane's Quest. They are off and racing. We had Chris Lacey, who's the chair of Cane's Quest, the endurance snowmobile race, on the show last weekend. Usually the course is about 3,500 kilometers, but because of the lack of snow, they've had to adjust the course, and now it's some 3,000 kilometers, albeit still an arduous task, but they're off and racing. Hopefully this is a safe zip for all teams who are involved, of which I think there's 35 teams participating in Cane's Quest. All right, let's keep going. So there's a big infrastructure announcement this morning coming up in Paradise at the Double Ice Complex at 11 a.m. widely anticipated to be something about the Paradise High School. You all are familiar with the story where they were at the top of the list for infrastructure regarding education, and then consequently high school is going to be built in Portugal Cove St. Philip's. All right, so if there's the Education Minister, Crystalline Howell, Minister Sarah Studley, the MHA, the newly minted MHA, and the Minister of Housing, Fred Hutton, with Paradise Mayor Dan Bobbitt this morning. So we'll find out, I suppose, at the same time at 11, but it's widely anticipated that it will indeed be the high school announcement. Okay, speaking of Minister Hutton, the Minister responsible for housing, you know, we were told last week that after he was sworn in the Government House that the Premier is still working on his mandate, the mandate for Mr. Hutton. So a couple of things. No doubt that housing is obviously a big issue here in the province and across the country. And of course, the federal government has done the same thing. They've splintered out a new ministerial portfolio for Sean Fraser, responsible for housing. But they're kind of two different things, aren't they? I wonder what the mandate looks like for Minister Hutton. So we know a lot of the authority, jurisdictional authority, lies with municipalities. So whether that be for the timeliness or the lack thereof of permitting and inspections, what have you, then there's not much anyone can do when we talk about interest rates. It's widely assumed that the Bank of Canada will leave their benchmark interest rate at 5% today. So where indeed does his mandate lie? Because, you know, when we talk about permitting and when we talk about access to skilled trades, so just curious, and not to say it's not a good idea to have a Minister for Housing, but really interested to know exactly what the mandate looks like for Minister Hutton. We do know that the province had put forward $3 million last fall to repair 143 units. Apparently the work has been completed on 123. Repair is underway with another additional 19 units. And then the federal government has come forward with some additional monies, $8.7 million over the course of 3 years to modernize and upgrade Newfoundland and Labrador Housing Corporation units. It's all about accessibility, energy efficiency, and of course the need, when we know the need is there, to get some of them out of being boarded up and shuttered to available to those who are eligible for them. So I really do want to know a bit more about what that mandate actually looks like and things that Minister Hutton will be responsible for. And in the world of purchasing a home, the federal government a number of years ago came forward with an incentive for first-time home buyers. And it was pretty significant. So an interest-free loan ranging from 5% to 10% of the property's purchase price. The government takes an equity stake in return and an annual cap of 8% on gains or losses. So what would happen is the participants were required to settle the loan and a portion of the equity gains upon the sale of the property or at the 25-year mark, whichever occurred first. It's going away. So the government anticipated over the course of the first 3 years of this plan, some 100,000 Canadians would avail of it, and nowhere near it. So maybe it's driven by the fact that, you know, people aren't buying homes the way they were as they watch interest rates, so, you know, very closely to see whether or not they're going to be eased the mortgage rate burden. But the program is going away. So as of midnight Eastern Standard Time on March 21st, that's the last opportunity to submit an application. After March 31st, the program will no longer approve new requests. So I'm not really sure what the motivation is behind this. It was a notice that was put up on the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corp's website just this late last week. So if you were interested in taking advantage of that pretty reasonable incentive plan, you've got limited time to get your name and your application in. So the deadline for the application is midnight Eastern Standard on March 21st, and after the 31st of this month, they will no longer be evaluating any of those applications. Anyway, curious. All right, let's keep going. So the House reopens later today, and political watchers will be keeping a close eye on some of the debates and the question period and the policies that may indeed be tabled. We wonder whether or not Jim Dinn is going to be allowed to speak. Of course, he's been told by the Speaker he has to apologize for remarks he made, and as of now, it doesn't sound like he's going to. But anyway, that's almost neither here nor there. Well, sorry, that's not fair, because it is here or there for Mr. Dinn. So they'll talk about healthcare and cost of living and all the rest of it. But of course, this sitting is basically about preparing for the budget, which is going to come down sometime this month. All right. When we've had a by-election already in Conception Bay, East Bell Island, there's one that's going to have to happen for Fogo Cape Friels, for Derek Braggs. And then, of course, Brian Ward now has gone back to the private sector, so another by-election. The budget will indeed tell the tale as to whether or not there's a general election coming. We all know the way things go. Early on in the mandate, governments, whether it be federally or provincially, if there's a need to tighten the belt, which of course there is in this province, they will maybe make some of those difficult decisions early in their mandate. Later on in their mandate, the budgets become more generous and money spread around a little bit more thoughtfully in an effort to curry favour. So the budget will really tell us whether or not we are leading into a general at some point this year. People will speculate wide and far, but I don't really know what's going to happen. But I'm not going to be surprised if we see that kind of tone and tenor coming from the majority governing Liberals this go around. You want to take it on? We can do it. And a story last week come from Cornerbrook where registered nurses working in the public sector were mandated to work 21-hour shifts. Why? Because 6 travel nurses were taken off the unit. Okay. So people are hoping for a reduction in the reliance on travel nurses, but after that story broke, you wonder what the level of coordination would be between NL Health Services and Canadian Health Labs, so that there are indeed people prepared to be on the schedule to pick up the slack if a travel nurse goes away. Because apparently in this case, no forewarning, and it was the day of, where all of a sudden the nurses were told, well, today's a 21-hour shift. So the lack of preparation and leads to the type of chaos and the frustration, I would imagine, shared by nurse practitioners, registered nurses. So once that story broke, maybe Yvette Coffey can give us an update as to whether or not there's been more of a conversation about coordination versus chaos, if and when these are going to be the order of the day, where the travel nurses are no longer front and centre. And then when we talk about those long shifts, patient safety, I think, can really guide these conversations. And then you've seen the stories as much as I have. And a couple of them had made national news. You know, a gentleman with dementia who was at the emergency room at the Health Sciences Centre managed to get outside, falls down, he's all battered and bruised. You see on the very front page of the National Post a story of a gentleman from this province who was waiting a couple of years for an MRI. Lo and behold, when he finally had it, he was diagnosed with a brain tumour. So all these things, you know, and it's not unique to this province, but these are extremely troubling stories. In addition, so I think there's still lots of unknowns regarding how the Comfort Inn is going to operate in their 140 transitional rooms, because apparently on Friday there was folks still living at Tent City were offered a room at the Comfort Inn. We're told there's people that are already residents there. But we still don't know whether or not the province has a formal vetting or eligibility criteria that's been put forward. We're still not sure about the final costs associated with this, because we know it's a 3-year lease at almost $7 million per year. So if it's open and operating, it'd be nice to have a very clearly articulated picture of what's happening inside there, whether it be with eligibility, whether it be with security, whether it be with the number of healthcare professionals or social workers, and it's Social Work Month as a matter of fact, who's there, and what kind of roles are in place. And when we talk about transitioning, where are the formal programs for the aforementioned transition, as opposed to maybe a turnstile? And we cannot have this become a quasi-emergency shelter. There's got to be much more to this, and so it'll be nice to know exactly where we are on that front. So maybe we'll have time to check in, because apparently if they're offering rooms and there's people already at the Comfort Inn, it would be excellent to have more information than we currently have in place. All right, back to the National Front for a second. So we know last week what was the linchpin between the Liberals and the NDP's supply and confidence agreement was about national pharmacare. Okay, so obviously coming in some sort of staggered approach. It's going to cost about $1.5 billion per year with it all when the smoke clears, covering for diabetes medication and for contraception. But here's where we are. And this comes from Federal Health Minister Mark Holland himself. So they've tabled this piece of legislation. It will indeed pass in the House. But the confusion still reigns supreme here. So they're just now beginning negotiations with the province. He says some are super eager to be part of this national plan, some not so much. For instance, Alberta and Quebec have said they're not participating in this. They have an interesting stance, and maybe not wrong. So in essence, what they're saying, in particular in Alberta, is give us the money. The money would cost to cover prescriptions, whether it be in diabetes medication or contraception for residents of Alberta. Give us that money. So we'll enhance our own programs that are already currently in place and remove that additional bureaucracy, which of course comes at a cost. So it's an interesting approach to take. We don't know exactly where this province is in these negotiations, whether or not we are interested to be all in, and or whether or not this is going to be a more popular sentiment across the country. Because similar to the National Dental Plan, it's fine to talk about these big, sweeping policy changes and the dollars and cents associated with it, and the numbers of Canadians who will be able to avail. In dental, it's about 9 million Canadians. In the pharmacare plan, it's all Canadians. So, again, is it a better idea in the world of healthcare transfer dollars? Give us a price tag. We have already seen the reviews, whether it be from the Parliamentary Budget Office and or the committees that have been struck to evaluate pharmacare and the cost of. Would it not be better to eliminate federal bureaucracy and put that additional monies in the form of the healthcare transfer dollar annually? I don't know. I think the province of Alberta, not on the right track in my personal opinion on many issues, but probably on the right track there. What do you think? All right, a couple of quick ones before we get to you. How are we doing on the phone, Dave? So, when we had the Lab West Summit that ended last week, and we've heard from Jordan Brown, the member for Lab West, and we've heard from Lab City Mayor Belinda Adams about it's fine to talk, but now we need the action lists. Curiously, there are a couple of places where I'm kind of surprised with some of the numbers we're seeing. So ongoing right now in Toronto is the annual Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada convention. With all of the minerals we have available in this province, especially in Labrador, and it doesn't matter whether or not you want an electric vehicle or not, the fact of the matter is these minerals are in demand. Some of the demand is curiously not following the price point. So here's an example. In 2023, the price of lithium fell by 82.3%. Nickel dropped 29.1%. Cobalt swooned, as they say in the article, at 38.5%. Manganese fell 22.3%. So overall, this is some of the comments coming from folks at the helm of this convention, is nickel, the price sucks broadly. But how do we square that circle? And what does that mean for people kicking the proverbial tires in this province? Because if the price isn't where the business model is required, then all the action that we were hoping for and we thought would take place, economically speaking, in Labrador, maybe, just maybe, have been stalled with the prices, period. So lithium fell 82.3% in 2023. That's a pretty staggering number. Okay, this is just one of these buyer beware plans or stories. So this one all comes down to a gentleman from this province. His name is Lloyd Walker, and he wanted to buy a keepsake for his great-granddaughter for, I believe it was her second birthday. And so he bought a coin, one of the Queen's Jubilee coins, from the Bradford Exchange. Everyone knows the Bradford Exchange, right? They've been kicking around forever, selling jewelry and coins and a variety of other, I think the story referred to them as trinkets. But here's what becomes problematic, is that unbeknownst to many folks who would go ahead and buy something from this exchange, is unbeknownst to the buyer, you've enrolled yourself in a subscription plan. So in this case, the gentleman thought he was buying a $70 coin, and then week after week or month over month, there was another package showing up in the mail, and he was being charged for things that he did not want. Now, the Bradford Exchange will say, it's right there on the website, right there in the brochures, that it is indeed a prescription plan, or a subscription plan. And fair enough, because I had a look, and it is there if you're very, very careful. So be sure, before you get involved in things like that, that you have a look and make sure you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Now, the company says you can indeed cancel when you want. This gentleman sent a letter in October, but yet the final payment was withdrawn from his account in December. So it's the concept of whether it's unfair or illegal. And in this province, it's not. Now, there's going to be call for heightened regulations and restrictions to protect the consumer in the country, and in some provinces, that's absolutely already in play. But here we go. In this province, automatic renewals of loans or subscriptions are not prohibited under the Consumer Protection and Business Practices Act. Coming from Service and Elder spokesperson Krista Dalton says, the Act prohibits unfair and unconscionable business practices and provides remedies for consumers. So you can indeed put forward your concern to the Director of the province's Consumer and Financial Services Division, but maybe, just maybe, given what we know, are nefarious and or bad actors lurking in your email email inbox every single day, and some of these opportunities to buy a commemorative coin, for instance, they're right there in front of you. Some might be very attractive and alluring, but you really have to be absolutely 100% sure what you're getting yourself into. We are on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Let's have a great show to kick off the week, and when we come back, John's there to talk about the War Memorial. Nadine wants to talk world energy, then the ongoing protests regarding changes to the ferry schedule in Change Island, and whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin this morning on the top of the board, line number 1. Good morning, John. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you today?
Very well, thanks for asking. How about you?
Oh, all right.
Okay.
You know, I'm 74. We have days where we're great and days where we're not so great.
Well, I think I can say the same for us 54-year-olds. What's on your mind this morning, John?
I wanted to talk to you a little. I'm kind of nervous about talking to you about this because I spoke to you on a number of occasions on other things that were more trivial, but I wanted to talk to you about our new war memorial. I'm calling it a new one. I visited a number of war memorials around the world, including, I think we have one in Ottawa, and I think I visited one in Arlington for JFK. And at most of them, one feature that's generally there is an eternal flame.
Right.
And I'm just, and I don't know who else to talk to. I thought if I spoke to you, somebody else might hear it and say, that might be a good idea. So I'm trying to get across the idea that maybe we should have an eternal flame at our war memorial, because my great uncle was killed at Beaumont Hamel, and I'm always trying to honor him. And I feel some kind of I feel somehow connected to him, even though we're 100 years apart. And but I just thought maybe someone out there might hear me talking to you and think that maybe it might be a good idea.
Yeah, because I don't think it's currently part of the, I think, a $6 million reverberation at the War Memorial. And I'm just trying to think now, because I've been to Arlington and I've seen that eternal flame there.
Isn't it beautiful?
It is. It absolutely is spectacular. Is there one at the National Memorial in Ottawa?
I'm trying. I was there a number of times, just before that guy who attacked it, and that was last. And I thought I saw that. And I'm not 100% sure, but what happened? That's what happens with a 74-year-old brain.
I've been there too, but I just for some reason can't picture whether or not there's an eternal flame in Ottawa, because there's only 2 National War Memorials here in the country, one in Ottawa, one here.
Yeah, and most people find it strange that when we talk about our war memorial, they forgot that we were our own country when that war happened. And just before I missed out by being about a couple of months from being born a Newfoundlander, and I wish I was, but I kind of thought there was, but I'm not 100% sure, because, like I said, there's some parts of my mind makes me think there was, but then there's other times, was there? The 74-year-old brains think like that.
Look, I think it's an excellent suggestion and a good question. And you mentioned the attack at the War Memorial, and that resulted in the death of Nathan Cirillo. And then, of course, the shooter was finally brought down at the Parliament building. It's the centre block of the Parliament building. So, if I remember correctly, wasn't the lethal shot fired by the Sergeant at Arms, who eventually became the ambassador to Ireland? And his name just jumped out of my head.
Yes, but he attacked the grave of the unknown soldier in Ottawa.
Yep.
Right, because I've been there a couple of times, and all war memorials like that are really moving. And if you've been to one in Arlington, it's like, oh my God, you don't even want to talk. So for us, our generation, it's so important. And I just thought to be going forward that if we have one to commemorate our people who were killed. I mean, my great uncle was killed at Beaumont Hamel, and I know a lot about. I think sometimes I think I know more about him than I do about my brothers down the street, right? And it's just I think it would be a wonderful idea, and I don't know who to talk to about it. That's the big problem for me, and that's why I thought if I talk to you, because I'll talk to you on a number of occasions on other things, and none of them to me is relevant as the War Memorial, because to me that's very important.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you in full. There's still some questions that I don't know where we've gone, because when the province cancelled the contract with Ocean Floor Granite for the construction of the tomb of the unknown soldier and the repatriation of the remains of a Royal Newfoundland Regiment soldier. So where are we on that front too? Because that company was using unique materials like Newfoundland black granite, which they call black gabbro, and then a product from Labrador called Blue Eyes. So we don't even know what's going on there. And the government went out and inspected his quarry and gave him the contract, which was valued somewhere in excess of $100,000. And then sometime later say because he's not connected to the grid, they had to cancel the contract. But they inspected the property before that, and nothing changed. So there's another question I'll throw out there regarding the War Memorial. But let me see if I can't get someone from the province to talk about the plans and the progress report and whether or not there's consideration of an eternal flame, because it is a lovely feature.
I don't know anything about what thing is made of or any of that stuff. It's not to my, that I just don't think about what things are made of. I don't even think about what my house is made of. But I don't know about what material goes into building it. I just think that it would be a wonderful occasion when this is probably going to be our last chance of, in our lifetime, people who actually care about people who got killed accidentally or otherwise at Beaumont Hamel. I've never been there, by the way, so I don't know. I've heard from people who have been there and say how beautiful it is, and was one of the best little places for that commemorates the World War I. And actually, I think recall reading at one point in time that Hitler actually visited and thought it was so beautiful that he actually decided to leave it there.
Really?
Yeah, and not blow it up like he did with a few other things. But for people who have relatives there, who, and I still call them relatives because he's so important to me. I was named after him, and I guess that started the key and about everything else. But I hope that some thoughts like that would go into it.
Yeah, let me see what I can find out, John. Now, someone's pointing out, and rightfully so, if something like that was in place, you'd need 24/7 surveillance and maybe military presence at the flame, because it would be, of course, hallowed grounds, and you can't trust people with protecting anything around here because they'll beat it up.
I don't like the people with going on it on our present war memorial with skateboards and stuff. I don't like that. But of course, when it was built in 1926, downtown St. John's was completely different than it is currently, right?
Right.
And I just think it doesn't show much respect to have people skateboarding over them or doing whatever else they do. I don't go down there very often.
Yeah, if you don't have malicious intentions and you're not going to create any damage or havoc, then fair enough, because there's a difference between going in and being a nuisance versus enjoying that section of the downtown. But I get your point. I appreciate you mentioned the Trail of the Caribou in Beaumont Hamel. So of course it was just September, I guess 2022, where the trail was finally completed with the caribou installed at Gallipoli in Turkey. John, appreciate the time to kick off the show. Thanks for making the call.
Like people like me who want to follow it don't like people going over it and making it into a playground or whatever. We go there to show, extreme respect for the people, especially from the First World, because it was built in between the wars, right? And this is, we, most of us who do go, I don't talk to many people who do go there, who go there to pay respect to these people.
Understood.
And we don't go there and play there.
I appreciate the time this morning. Thanks a lot, John.
And thank you for any help that you could possibly
Yeah, let's
do.
see what we can find out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break. When we come back, Nadine, you're next to talk about World Energy. I assume that's World Energy GH2 and their proposal for the Port-to-Port Peninsula. And then Dennis wants to talk about the protests on Change Islands. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Always in an effort to be accurate with the information. So we were talking about, the shooting that happened in Parliament to down the guy who killed Nathan Cirillo. And one more also. David tells me that a caller said that the flame, the eternal flame, is at Parliament Building. It's not at the National War Memorial in Ottawa. But back to the shooting inside the House of Commons. So I was thinking, and this was the story initially, is that it was Kevin Vickers, who was a sergeant at arms. And the story was, based on even comments coming from Mr. Vickers himself, said either I put him down or I've engaged the suspect, he is deceased. And that was the story for the longest while. But it's not accurate. Based on witness reports, RCMP Constable Curtis Barrett, who was leading the tactical formation, fired the shot that killed that guy. I'm not even going to give his name out. So that's the accurate information. And you know who told me that and corrected me this morning? RCMP Constable Curtis Barrett himself, who fired the shot and protected everyone on Parliament Hill. So thank you very much for that, Curtis. Fascinating stuff. Let's go to line number 2. Nadine, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Still wrapping my idea around the World Energy GH2 project here on the Port-to-Port Peninsula. We have been, I guess that this is about 2 years now. I'm speaking on behalf of the residents here on Cape St. George, and and I am also involved in environmental transparency, the committee as well, and we've been going back and forth with the government in that year through the past couple of years with our concerns of the environment especially. And this is why I'm calling today. It's caused a lot of division here with the Indigenous groups and have whatnot. The leaders have not spoken for the members as per se. There was no meetings with us in general discussing about this project. Where they are our stewardships and our leaders to protect Mother Earth. I feel disappointed as a Mi'kmaq myself, in not having engaging with the Mi'kmaq people here, especially in the Port-to-Port and the areas are going to be affected.
Okay, so just before we get too far down the road, so concerns about the environment, understood, but concerns with the assessment. Is there anything specifically inside the approach that the government's taking with the environmental assessment that you're talking about, or you're simply talking about environmental impact?
Both, actually. We are looking over the environmental assessment throughout the past, year or so, and now with your amendments, you would need our own experts and our own people to come in and just take a look at exactly, because in the amendments, we are finding, our many questions here are not answered. You go through the areas of the questions and concerns, and into there they would say reviewer comments. And then you would give a response, they will say thank you. And then there's no response required, and supporting documentation, none. So, this is an amendment now that's going through the EIS process, which the government, entails World Energy GH2 to go back and go more in depth in these areas. So, this process, we only have 50 days to comment again, and that's still not enough time to have this process, EIS, to have a full, thorough look at the amendments and understand, areas of concern for me in Cape St. George. We have right now a transitional reserve back into 2022 on July the 7th. The provincial government releases a recovery plan to protect the limestone barren species at risk, and we are in that area. And there's a narrow corridor between there and our watershed, which is approximately 1,000 feet. And they want to put 7 turbines up in that area. Now, we have the limestone barrens, which is the most unique, and the biodiversity as the most ecological hotspot here, and it has one of the most rare plants in the world. So, we have a lot of concerns of how this project is going to come in and totally destroy with the explosive, for the barren mountains here. We have glaciers here that's been formed for years, and geologists has been coming from all over the world here. It's a very good hot spot. So it's very concerning to see this probably be at risk and total extinction, because with all the mega size of this project is what's so alarming. We want jobs, yes, and we need to protect the environment, and we need climate change. But how green is this going to come in? And they're going to completely destroy landscapes here. And it's not only here; it's going to be all over the province. I mean, it's all of a sudden wind energy is going at a bust and a rush. And I feel that it's not going to be done properly. We need to slow this down. As a resident, I walk every day, and I'm just so heartened. I'm just heartened and looking at our landscapes next year, and it's in the hands of the government right now. And the government, when they bring out a provincial release protecting the limestone barrens, and we're under one of the 10 endangered species found in limestone barren here. So we are one of the areas that's going to be under the government's eye for the protection. And when you see articles coming from Alberta that have viewscapes and they don't want to produce any more energy or possible wind farms or any development.
Yeah, but their motivation is different.
35-kilometer zone. So here we don't have enough buffer zone. You're talking about the environmental, the transitional reserve here. There's just a road that just goes over the mountain here. I don't know if they use that for I guess it would be a line or a boundary line, but it's not enough room on the peninsula here to erect 155 proposed towers here. And what I feel so sad about is that no one has come to us here on the Port, whether it's through government, through the Indigenous leaders, to see how we feel, to see how the people feel here in Port. There's a lot of seniors here that don't go out, and they're not speaking, but they are sad because we do have retirees that would like to come back here and to fulfill the retirement. And there's, this peninsula is so small. And
Nadine, have you gone to any of the World Energy GH2 town halls?
Pardon me?
Have you gone to any of their presentations or town halls?
Yes, most definitely.
So, in addition to that, what else do you think has to be done or should be done regarding social license and consultation? Because if they're opening up the door and say, come in, ask your questions, hopefully they can provide adequate answers. So beyond that, what does consultation look like?
The consultation would be people from the areas that's going to be affected, Cordroy as well, come in and speak with them personally. You have meetings coming out of Stephenville that you're going in. We had a meeting here last April on 26th, and we spent 6 hours, and they're so-called experts. And we are just locals here, and we asked questions upon questions, and there was no specific answers. They mitigate, but there's no plans. You have to understand that this is a new industry. There's no data out there that's going to likewise come here and say, this is okay, this is a great thing, we're going to put it in your area. But no one can guarantee us right now the impact and the risk is going to be involved in this project here.
Well, we understand what wind farms look like. The new part of this project or proposal is the hydrogen ammonia play, because wind is not new. I mean, there's wind on the ground in many jurisdictions across the world. So we understand how the wind projects work. The only new feature here is the electrolysis plant, hydrogen and ammonia for export. Right?
Yes, we understand that, but still, the people of the Port, the heart of the project is going to be the wind, and you're going to have over 600-foot turbine towers here, okay? So when you look at a wind farm in Ontario and PEI and you see the wind towers just going over the treetops, I mean, you don't even see them. It's the viewscapes here is going to be after, but it's the impact. Is the impact from these towers where they're going to be so large? We don't know. Like, there's no studies to come here and tell us that it's been on the mountaintops here and it's going to have enormous, whether it's going to be the vibrations, the enormous devastation it's going to have on just taking the 40% of the peninsula here to put these turbines up to produce the hydrogen in Stephenville. Now, people in Stephenville, like we all know that they are for the project there, and of course, the windmills are not, as people would say, not in your backyard. And we're not against having, more jobs and the renewable energy, but it's got to be done responsibly, Patty. I mean, if you're talking about a project that's going to come here and it's going to be a success, the people of the peninsula should be the ones spoken to, because we are the ones going to be greatly affected, because there's going to be more land mass that's going to be destroyed here. Our wilderness, our way of life, we are the ones that are going to have to live with the changes. So, when it comes to change, climate change and stuff, yes, we're all in it for that. But I mean, at what cost is it going to be for the people here in the peninsula, in the Codry Valley? And now they're talking about other wind farms across the province. These are not just small wind farms you're talking about here. You're talking about 155 here, 300 probably proposed or more in Central. You have down on the Burns. The wind energy is not something new. The hydrogen is. And there's a lot of risk involved in that as well.
Sure. Nadine, I'm going to have to get off to the break, but I do appreciate you making time. I'll give you the final word, though, before I go.
Okay. Yes, I would like to encourage the residents to also go to, there's going to be an assessment with Dr. Camille Belair and with Justin Brake with the Berry Grounds in mainland at the Tea Room this Sunday at 10, starting from 1 until 4. And we're going to be going over as much of the assessment as we can and make any sense of this. So we encourage the people of the Port, please come out, show your concerns, ask questions about the EIS, and we hope that the government, take its time. Don't rush this project. It's a new project, and it has to be the people first.
Understood. I appreciate the time, Nadine.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Enjoy
Take care. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And World Energy, it's either they know something we don't know, or they're just very optimistic about a final approval coming, and it's April 9th. So we'll see where we go. But, I mean, it's not without note that they've signed the Memorandum of Understanding with Germany and the town of Stephenville. And she mentioned Indigenous leaders. They also have a Memorandum of Understanding in place with the Halibut First Nation. They raised $50 million from a Korean company sometime early last year, April or May maybe. And then, of course, they bought the port of Stephenville. They've secured couple of 100,000 plus acres of Crown land. They've got a $128 million line of credit with the federal government. So they have their wheels absolutely in motion without this final approval coming. So make of it as you will. Let's take a break. When we come back, Dennis, you're next. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Dennis, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Patty.
Morning to you.
Thank you for taking my call.
No problem.
What I'm calling about this morning is Change Islands, and we're planning on holding a rally at the Confederation Building 1 o'clock today to try and explain what we feel is unfair treatment to the residents of Change Islands.
Sure, go ahead and describe the changes. I did indeed get an email from, I believe, someone belonged to your family, Dennis, about what some of the proposals are you want to share with the listeners.
Actually, Patty, I am the chair of our transportation committee for the community, and you received a email from the mayor.
Okay, because they asked for their privacy, so I just left their name out.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Anyway, what has happened? A little background: we've been serviced. Fogo Island, Change Islands, and Farewell Run was serviced by the veteran. The veteran had to go into dry dock for maintenance and repairs. So the Department of Transportation Infrastructure put the Comatic from Labrador on that run. Right. Everything was fine. Apparently, we've been told, now it ran that same schedule, the same winter vessel, one summer schedule that has been followed by the veteran for several years. It followed that for a month. After a month, they sent out an email to us, to the Transportation Committee, that they could not maintain that schedule because this vessel is bigger, our docks are smaller than that vessel requires, and there's a wind factor. So they were constantly behind schedule, so they would have to make changes. That's fine. What happened after that is the problem. They decided that they would make changes that would. They kept the same schedule for 5 days. For 2 days, they took stops into Change Island. They took those away. That would make up the difference for our week. And we just don't understand. That's not. We know it's not true. So anyway, we contacted them. We tried to contact them. I sent them a letter. They didn't even reply. Now, when I say they, I sent it to the manager of the Marine Division for Transportation Infrastructure. They didn't even reply. We didn't have a MHA. As you know, we're waiting for a by-election to be called for that district. So the mayor contacted the Premier's office. They were very cordial. Everything seemed fine. They were going to work on it and make it more fair for everybody. And they didn't. And the next day, they posted that schedule. That this is the schedule. It's the unfairness that really is, I find, most upsetting, and the lack of communication with us. And I just ask myself, if this were Marine Atlantic arbitrarily making changes to the schedule that would negatively affect Newfoundland, our government wouldn't be happy with it. And why do they not respond to a letter in writing to an elected municipal government? It's raising more concerns. We've been without a nurse for over a year out there, so all of our medical needs have to be handled off our island. So we require nobody leaves the island just for a pleasure trip. It's generally for doctor's appointments or for some other life basic needs. And we just decided that we had several protests on the vessel, and this is something else that I find that I can't understand, that our government named the vessel after our veterans that fought for our freedom, and then they sent someone down to tell us that we're breaking the law and we could be charged under federal regulation for mischief.
Right. Now, regarding the protest, Dennis, we had a call last week from a gentleman who was there and said that there was an unfortunate interaction with someone who was yelling obscenities at them and apparently threatened to light them on fire and shoved one of the protesters. What became of that? Any update?
Well, actually, Patty, we recognized when we decided that this is the route we were going to take, that it would inconvenience all travelers, not just the travelers from Fogo, but also it also has an impact on travelers from Change Island. So we tried to minimize it. We chose not to have any protests on the first crossing of the day, because that's when most people leave for their appointments. We also, one of our protests, there was some wind. There was a wind warning out, so this vessel can't sail in the wind or can't dock properly, so there's more delays due to weather. So we chose that day, and none of these are planned ahead of time. They are pop-up protests. So this one we figured, well, may have less impact because there were less people traveling. So we did hold that one up longer. But we did tell the deck crew to pass on a message to the captain that if the wind becomes a safety factor, to let us know, and we would leave the vessel.
Yeah, because, I mean, I couldn't understand the basis of that negative interaction in the first place, because if people are looking for enhanced service, then how is that a bad thing for someone who would be on Change Islands, opposing the protesters? I'm kind of confused as to where that landed in the first place, but...
Yeah, me too. I don't support that, and... I wasn't there that day.
Fair enough. Anything else before we run out of time, Dennis?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that we in no way have any ill feelings towards Fogo Island. Their town council actually made a post that they made changes to, but I don't think that they meant to impact us in those changes. So I support the council for standing up for their people and getting their crossings reinstated.
Fair enough. I appreciate you making time for the show, Dennis.
And our rally today will be at the Confederation Building at 1:00.
Fair enough. And if folks are interested in attending, there's the details. Stay in touch, Dennis.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
All right. Yeah. So there's a lot to that. To further the comments from Nadine about World Energy GH2, which really gobbles up or, uses most of the oxygen regarding these wind to hydrogen to ammonia proposals. So people are telling me, well, the fix is in. Look, I don't know the status of the environmental assessment review inside Minister Davis's office, but the whole concept of triggering a federal assessment, that was the one area where, I don't really know how Stephen Guilbeault, the minister responsible federally, decided that there was no need for federal involvement here. And fair enough, look, we don't need the feds in our business every time we turn our heads. But that would have triggered a couple of key things. It would have triggered potential status for folks to be for intervener status, for instance. It also could very likely come with funding for what people will call experts, whether it be environmental issues or hydrologists to talk about impact on water like we saw on mainland. So that's where that additional layer of examination, whether that provides cold comfort or not, I'll leave it up to the folks in the area. But that's what would happen if and when the Federal Environmental Assessment Agency had to get involved. Let's take a break. When we come back, Clyde's there to talk about the roads. Jim wants to talk about the airport. Which one? We'll find out. And Chris is also there to talk about wind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Just for clarification coming from someone who was witnessed that scuffle at the ferry protest. That person was not a resident of Change Islands. It was a resident of Fogo traveling to Farewell. So that's the accurate info there. Let's go to line number 1. Clyde, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy,
morning.
from the Arm Peninsula again. John Abbott put out proposals for communities and that to send in pictures and stuff of the roads for the, the new budget coming up pretty soon there for the, do some of the roads for us here in Newfoundland, especially the ones all over these small communities, and that it's terrible. Nothing has been done for years and years. The culverts is, the pipes is all caving in, and that's where you get a lot of the bumps from, and plus, there hasn't been a good surface put under. Some of this was just put over the bag back in the day for a few election votes, you know what I mean? So the deteriorated so bad now that, it got to be upgraded in places, right?
Well, obviously. The last time I was on the Burin Peninsula, I suppose, as I say oftentimes, I think the same commentary can be offered for many of the areas of the province where the road work has gone unattended to for a long time. I can't remember the tally or the number of thousands of kilometres of road on the island. I think it's somewhere around 12,000 kilometres of roads. So there's obviously and always going to be a backlog of roads needing repair, but my God, some places are just shockingly bad.
Paddy, what happens is, I know engineer, but I mean, what happens is, I mean, common sense will say, when you get this mild weather and you got cracks in the road, the water goes down, and then when you get to frost, it all heaves up after you get to thaw again, you know. So each time we get that, it seems we've been getting that kind of weather more often than we used to, because we used to get a lot of frost and you have your winter, but these days we seem to be having a lot of thawing and freezing, so I guess that's even worse on the roads, eh?
Well, yeah, I mean, the heat, but sometimes I think we possibly overstate, or the government overstates the impact of freeze and thaw, because it's a northern country. Freeze and thaw is a feature of just about all the roadways in the country. Of course, there's parts of the country that get limited ice the way we do, but yeah, the freeze and thaw is unavoidable. I mean, even if we just talk about the presence of potholes, man, there are some craters in the areas that I drive normally in the city here itself, and I know that's not provincial responsibility, but yeah, freeze and thaw is going to damage the roads, undoubtedly. But, you know, if you go to New Brunswick and the freeze and thaw, their roads are not quite as bad as ours. You go to Nova Scotia, their roads aren't quite as bad as ours. Well, in my limited experience driving those roads, which I have many times over the years.
Yeah, Paddy, I think they're talking about privatising some of the stuff that the Department of Transportation does. I don't know about privatising. I think they're having cutting back over the years. Like, we used to, every year, our roadway, I'll give you a better picture, comes from the main highway to Rock Harbour. We go through Spanish Room too, right? They got a proposal put in too, because we had to drive that road line with them to get here, right, to Rock Harbour. And well, it is 96 kilometres of road, and like I say, they don't maintain it at all like they used to. I mean, if you don't dig out the ditches, and it's going to get even worse for the road part, and they're not putting in no new pipes or culverts. There's 3 or 4 places there like that. So hopefully they got a proposal put in, and we had a meeting with our member back in August, Jeff Dwyer, on the brush on the side of the roads and the condition of the pavement. So back then I took pictures of that, and I took pictures of the road, and we send all that to him. So I mean, it's not like they don't know that there's problems. I mean, how many places is going to be fixed? That's the problem. I mean, like you just said, there's so many places to do. Can they at least make an effort and patch up some of the real bad spots that have been there for years and years? And I've been here complaining on Openline. You know, I send you pictures of it there a while back, right? So hopefully this will do something at least to get a few pipes put in and get some of the real bad spots done up for the people of Rock Harbour and Spanish Room, plus all the tourists and anybody else that wants to come this way, you know.
Fair enough, Clyde. I appreciate the time this morning, because it's not just beating up your vehicle, it's also about safety on the roadways. Anything else before?
Roadways, yes, Paddy. I'll give you one last thing. Like I say, the buses coming out here, and I had a plow driver clearing the snow, navigates this, I don't know, but hopefully the budget is coming down, the house is open, so they'll hear us, and at least if you try and do something with it, at least we'll see an effort, but I don't see nothing, you know what I mean?
Yep. I know what you mean.
But anyway, take care, Paddy. Nice talking to you.
You too, Clyde. All the best.
Yep, bye.
All right, bye-bye. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to, where do you want me to go here, Dave? At 13 past. Line 4? Okay, line 4 it is. Morning, Chris. You're on the air.
Oh, hey, how are you, Patty?
Doing okay. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. So I just wanted to make a kind of a quick tag on the comments about the wind farms and this idea that, well, you know, we know what wind farms look like, and, you know, so that part should maybe more or less be understood. The size of turbines that we're talking about here are really quite exceptionally large. And if you've been following the wind market over the last couple of years, a couple names stand out as having lost, billions of dollars between them, and that's Siemens Gamesa and Alstom. And the particular way they lost their money was around their gearboxes. And so basically, the larger a turbine gets, the slower it needs to spin in the middle. And so there's a huge amount of power trying to go through that space. And the super turbines that are, that have the roto diameter of like 150 or so, they have just been breaking much, much more than has been expected, to the point where at least Indians, maybe both of them, have dropped their line of largest turbine because they just can't deliver on prices or dependability.
Yeah, the price point conversation regarding wind power is very real, and we've seen some major countries with their subsidies go kind of upside down. Germany comes to mind with their thirst for wind energy. But that conversation, I think, is maybe just slightly different. Now, I think there's a distinct overlap because there's a price point concern for the end product, product that would be hydrogen and ammonia going to Germany. How do I know that? Because the Germans have set aside $1.2 billion to offset costs. But the wind energy direct to consumers, that price point issue is a bit different than this hydrogen issue, albeit, as I said, there's some distinct overlap, but it's not quite the same thing.
Well, and that's very correct, but just in terms of the expected turbines that could be used, I'm pretty sure they had been looking at those supersized ones, and they may not be on the market at all. And indeed, the larger end of the turbines may be getting smaller. So I put a link on your Twitter from a really great article that gets into the discussion of big turbines versus small, and the market may be deciding that we have found the biggest turbines, and it is, smaller than the largest ones that are on the market now.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance. I have seen the link, but haven't had a chance to click it. But, I mean, the turbines, people say, well, I've seen a wind farm, whether it be in the Shetland Islands or in Ontario or wherever the case may be, but you haven't seen these. I mean, there are wind turbines that have currently been erected that are about 150 meters, and we're talking about 200-meter turbines here. So back when wind was becoming a thing, I know it goes back a long way when we talk about Holland or what have you, but when we were creating wind energy projects. So in the early 90s or whenever the accurate date is, we were talking about turbines that you could throw a rock over. And now we're talking about a 200-meter turbine. For context and comparison, Confederation Building is about 64 meters tall, and we're talking about 200-meter wind turbines. So these are absolutely massive. At some point, given the reliability and the robust nature of the turbine, whether it be the tower itself and or the blades, there has got to be some sort of limit coming sometime. I mean, I don't know if your article is similar to what I've been reading, talk about full 1 gigawatt turbines on one turbine. So at some point, they're going to be too big to be useful.
And it does go into exactly that.
Okay.
It in particular, it goes down a list of which things get cheaper as you scale up and which things either don't get cheaper or get more expensive. And the gearboxes on the supersized ones are, this is not said in the article, but it seems like they're largely non-viable at this point. And so one of the consequences of that is that if they bump down to a smaller size of turbine, then they need more of them to hit the same amount of energy.
Exactly.
And then the blades would also be spinning faster. So if there are concerns around bats and bees and birds and all that, then there would be a larger risk factor with the faster, smaller turbines.
Yeah, you're 100% right. The advantage of the smaller turbine is less material, but more turbines required. So if we're talking about the same amount of energy output, I would imagine material usage would be very similar. And of course, then the geographic footprint would be larger with more small turbines. Good point regarding how quick the turbine would have to spin. We talk about the impact on birds, for instance, and I think people understand that. But someone sent me a really interesting article regarding the bat population, and that doesn't get a lot of consideration, but that is a huge possibility for a problem for the bat population and what bats actually mean in the ecosystem and the balance that they help strike. So fascinating stuff. I am going to read the article that you sent me because there's all sorts of things regarding efficiency and what people refer to as the square cube law and what that as it pertains to the cost and the size and the power generated. So I'll have a look at what you sent along, but I don't even know if it's good, bad, or indifferent regarding the size of the turbine, but I do know that if you think about it, like even the distance between the top of Signal Hill and the ocean is somewhere around 150 or 140 meters. We're talking another 50 or 60 meters on top of that for one turbine. It's really something else when you think about it.
It's pretty breathtaking. And now, so there are the supposed advantage of the bigger turbines is that it gets windier the higher up you go. And so the smaller, shorter turbines would also have that added element of power loss as well, in that they would be, less productive per turbine and also receiving less wind-related fuel.
Yeah, you need fewer connections and all kinds of things when we talk about the big turbine. So anyway, I'll have a read of the article, as I mentioned, but there's got to be some sort of limit at some point in the future with the size of the turbine. Now, add to it, if people want to talk about the amendments being proposed to the Atlantic Accord to allow for offshore wind, which would be also massive turbines. So there is an upside and a downside to everything, including the size of these turbines that we're talking about. And I'm not even sure if the other proposals outside of World Energy GH2 are considering the same 200-meter turbine that we're talking about on the Port Peninsula. Anything else you want to offer this morning, Chris?
Just a quick comment on the line of credit that World Energy has gotten.
Yep.
They did confirm to me on Twitter this morning that money would not be going to the community vibrancy funds, which is the helping out the local communities fund that is supposed to start with construction. And of course, they are not starting construction yet. But that then leaves me wondering where in the province or the country or the continent that money will be spent, and if it will be benefiting the west coast of Newfoundland at all.
Yeah, I know that they are not talking about those community enhancement projects quite yet. So we'll see how that money's going to be spent. And of course, it's not a cash on the barrelhead, $128 million. It's basically a line of credit, so they don't have to reapply time and time again for the exact same pot of money. So we'll see. And of course, it's not that long ago Mr. Risley said he would not be going to the province and or the federal government for this type of grant or loan or line of credit. So something has changed.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems kind of consensus across the industry that the largest scale of project is not commercially viable without, dramatic and sustained government subsidies. And, if we're going to be spending a utility amount of money on an energy project, we may as well have it as part of our public utility, I guess.
Yeah, but I don't think it's unlike monies that are already in the world of energy in different parts of the country. Like, for instance, the Everwind project in Nova Scotia has availed of this type of monies. And then, of course, if we're talking energy and the transport of, we're all on the hook for in excess of $30 billion to transport oil via Trans Mountain. So government has long been involved in these types of projects. Given that this is so new, it just has a different feeling or a different flair.
And we have been, but, when government chooses to spend money on behalf of the private sector or on behalf of the public sector, I think is particularly important when it comes to power generation.
No argument. We still don't know about the interaction with the public grid. We still don't know about the firm definition of green, because that's going to have huge consequences with access to the federal tax subsidies. And I mean, we're talking about the range between 15 and 40% of cost being covered in the tax subsidy. So there is a huge number of questions that are still looming, but World Energy seems to be quite optimistic with their recent, whether it be the $128 million or $50 million from a South Korean company, the memorandums of understanding that have been signed, the purchase of the Port of Stephenville. So they think that they're on their way.
They do, but they haven't made final investment decision yet.
Nope.
Which, in terms of big business, that's where the rubber hits the road. And memorandums of understanding are affirmations of good intentions, I guess. But, they don't... nothing really runs off of them,
No, you're right. And the final investment decision cannot be made, no matter how you slice it, until that definition of green is formalized and put in place. Now, the hope for the companies is that we'll see things like the Nova Scotia projects would rely on. So, 58% of their energy produced is still reliant on coke and coal versus 80% renewables here, which would get a higher tax break. Because if we're talking green, then it's got to be as green as possible. Add to it, we're not even quite sure what the or the advancements that have been made with recycling the material of a turbine. Lifespan around 25 years. Currently, for the most part, we're just burying them in landfills. That's not exactly very green.
No. And I think they're, and these conversations are important. And I think, there are definitely some people who fundamentally don't like wind energy for a variety of reasons, good and bad. But our grid is already really quite green, and it's my understanding we actually still have quite a bit of hydro capacity that we haven't tapped into, both on island and off.
Yep, that's for sure.
So, why are we solving this problem for Germany, I guess? We did the hard work and, paid a lot for it as taxpayers to do it. And, it seems like a very strange bit of environmental policy to me.
Well, I mean, they're talking about the industry being a $1 trillion industry by 2040. I'm not all in or all out. I'm just interested in getting as much information as possible. Just ask questions, and then we can all determine for ourselves whether or not we think it's a good idea and worthwhile of provincial and federal investment, because it comes with a cost, and that's just the nature of the beast when we talk about energy. I appreciate the time, Chris. Off to the break I go.
Cool, man. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's take that break. Stu's there to talk about the lack of blood services. Jim's back to talk about Stephenville Airport. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go line 5. Jim, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
Yes, I'd like to talk to you about a caller that called in last week talking about the airport in Stephenville.
Yep, go ahead.
Basically saying it was like a scam or something.
Yeah, I mean, he had some pretty firm and or harsh words to describe the project, the proposal, and Mr. Diamond himself. And, I don't know if we can, at this point, call it anything firmly, because maybe there's a hard time raising money. Maybe it is some sort of grift or scam. I don't know, but he was really quite firm in his opinion.
Yeah. Well, apparently you can't get hold to this guy Diamond, eh? Like he don't return your call or something?
Oh, well, we've had Mr. Diamond on in the past, and we'll endeavour to have him on again in the future, because, people will tell me, well, he doesn't know anyone any answers. It's a private business, but it was a former public asset, and the proposals were, or the promises or pledges were enormous, which absolutely played some sort of role in the approval of the sale. So we'll see if we can get him on in the near term, because I think an update is warranted.
I would think so. And also, do the provincial government have any money put into this or anything right yet, or anything guaranteed loans for him or something?
No, not at this point. They've said that they are not going to inject any further cash. Once the line of credit that was in place on behalf of the provincial government was solved or settled, then that would be it. So at this stage, the province has said no.
Oh, so they did get money in front?
Well,
what you're saying?
Pardon me?
They got money up front already?
No, the purchase was between the Airport Authority and the Diamond Group of companies. The province had a line of credit that the Airport Authority was using. Once that was paid down, then the government said that would be the end of the road regarding money directly for those supports. Now, there's still a question that I haven't got an answer to, is when the government was talking about, WestJet going to London Gatwick and the incentives that would be floated by St. John's International Airport Authority, there's some $3.75 million that's spread throughout all of the airports in the province for operational support. Does any of that go to Stephenville? We don't know, or I don't know anyway.
Yeah, because it seems like a pipe dream, though. Like, I've heard him talk on your show talking about these massive drones and building firewalls and, and all this, I think there is a bit of a scam behind this somewhere along the line.
I don't know. I mean, he's talking about hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of jobs in the drone manufacturing and bringing back more passenger air service to the airport in Stephenville. Some pretty lofty promises. And at this point, nothing other than a deal he made with John Risley and World Energy GH2 for a laydown yard. That's all that's happened. There was some work done on the runways, but that was funded by the federal government and was already in place. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not really interested in calling anyone a scam artist or con man or anything, but I am more than eager to have Mr. Diamond on to answer the obvious questions. And it's not questions based on, me trying to sensationalize it or anything. We'll just go back to initially what was promised and where we are.
Well, the mayor of Stephenville, some guy Rose or
Tom Rose, yeah.
Tom Rose, he seems pretty sure everything is right on, unless he's part of a scam.
Well, he was an ex officio member of the Stephenville Airport Authority when this was ongoing, and of course also sitting in the mayor's chair. He's quite bullish on this period. Look, if there's any forward progress made, because the airport itself had stalled, right? There was no action in Stephenville, so if there's any progress, whether that includes drone manufacturing or otherwise, whether or not he's able to attract any carriers to provide enhanced service from Stephenville remains to be seen. But I would not mind to get a few answers from Mr. Diamond. not in an effort to be mean, but in an effort to try to get info.
Exactly. Now, speaking of Mr. Rose here, the mayor, he sat on the board, you say, of Stephenville Airport?
He was a full-blown member of the board of the airport authority, but when all of this was going down, he was an ex-member. I think he held an ex officio position, non-voting.
That sounds like a bit of a conflict of interest to me. Like, I don't know. Something is not right there. I mean, when you get the guy that's head of the board of the Stephenville Airport is raising now the mayor, like something is not right.
Yeah, now I guess officially speaking and technically speaking, the decision to make the sale was finalized by the airport authority itself, of which Mayor Rose had an honorary position, a non-voting position.
Right, non-voting. Yeah, I know. Well, anyway, we'll just see. I hope we're not considered another bunch of stupid Newfoundlanders again like we were 50 years ago in Ontario. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that any of this makes anybody look stupid at this moment in time because the airport was virtually idle. It remains idle with repaired runways. So if there's not going to be any advancement, which should have been part of the contract anyway, right? Timelines associated with reinstating flights, and something, even if it was a generous timeline. So if there's no forward momentum, then we've got to go back to the drawing board and hopefully see if there's someone who can operate it with an injection of money and some of the promises that can be followed up on. Maybe there's a status report that we'll all be surprised with. I don't know. I somehow doubt it, but I'm going to be happy enough to try to get it.
Yeah. By the way, this guy Diamond, is he from Newfoundland or is he a mainlander? Or where the hell is he from?
I think he's originally from here. His parents live here. I know that.
Oh, it's all right, eh?
Yep.
So you're expecting or hoping to get him online?
I think so. I think sooner than later we're going to be able to get him. Well, fingers crossed, anyway.
I think in his own defense, he'd be a lot better off coming online, even if it is a lie, because, I mean, everybody's wondering about it.
And they're all reasonable questions. Some people will be quick to call it a full-on grift or a scam. Others will just have basic and understandable and justifiable questions, of which I have. And I have a ton of them regarding this purchase and the future of the airport. And stay tuned to the show. Let's see if we can get him on.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your time, Jim.
Have a good day.
You too, man. Bye-bye. All right, let's try to get back on track with the break. Stu, you're there in the queue to talk about the lack of blood services on the west coast of the island. And then Belinda Adams, who's the mayor of Lab City, is going to join us right after this as well. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Stu, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How was your weekend?
Pretty good weekend, nice and quiet. Just what the doctor ordered.
Yeah, they're rare sometimes, but we take them when we can get them.
Absolutely.
Last week I was talking to a representative of Red Cross. I guess it's blood red. But anyway, so she verified for me that the provincial and federal governments contribute to their services, and so I guess the only question now is, she couldn't tell me what amounts. Of course, she probably wouldn't know that. But I'm wondering if you could put in a call to our health minister and get them to do their homework before they come on and find out how much they are contributing, and and the public. Could we get involved? Could we do some fundraising also? So that's basically all I can say for now. Is that. We'll do some research, I guess, and find out just what the government here contributes to it. And because even if we had it for twice a year, like two satellite clinics twice a year, because the last time I gave blood here in Port-aux-Basques, I can't recall how long ago it was, but there was a good turnout. People were steady coming and going all the time at this clinic. It was in the one of the buildings up there. Across from the mall there, Lions Club, I think. Yeah, Lions Club, because, gosh, I was wondering, they're not gone as well. So basically, that's all I can say on it right now, Patty. If you could inquire through the health minister.
Sure. I just want to make sure that I know what we're talking about here. So you mentioned the Red Cross. Do you mean the Canadian Blood Services or the Red Cross?
Yes.
Canadian Blood Services.
Yeah, and I talked to her also about, people being paid to donate. She said they wouldn't get involved in that part of it. So again, I think you can put those questions maybe to the health minister. They may have some ideas, but I think generally, if everybody worked together on this, we should be able to come up with something.
Right, and again, I'm just going to make sure we're on the same page. So the question is, given the amount of money that would come potentially from the provincial government, of which I have no idea what that is, per year to Canadian Blood Services, is that if the government, whether it be ensure that they expand their footprint to the West Coast and or create some more mobile clinics. I know there's an issue with staffing and what have you, but you're not wrong. I mean, when they talk about the need for blood donations, and that happens all the time, right? We hear them advertising on this station. If there's that sort of need, how do they compare the need to the numbers of people who would gladly make donations but are so far away from Austin Street here in the city, or not Austin Street, whatever the name of that street is, where Canadian Blood Services is. So fair enough. I'll see what I can find out. I don't know what the number would be.
Yeah, that's basically, I think, that's what we can do from there. So you check that out, and we'll have a conversation, and you can flick me an email if you're going to have somebody on. So I'll set aside some time and have a listen, and we go from there.
No, here's the deal. I'll get someone on. You tune in every single show Monday to Friday, 9 to 12.
Okay, you got me.
Got it. Thanks, Stu.
Okay, buddy. Thanks.
All the best. Bye-bye. Yeah, I don't want to shortchange because I'm looking forward to speaking with Mayor Belinda Adams from Lab City here in a minute, but we're pretty close to the break, so let's get this one in before we come back and speak with the Mayor. Line 3, Jennifer, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. It's Jennifer from the Royal Canadian Legion on Blackmarsh Road.
Welcome back.
I just wanted to remind everybody about our flipper dinner or roast beef dinner, March 11th, 2024. Tickets are $25. You can take them out between 4 and 5:30 or eat in at 6 p.m.
Since we last talked, any action?
Oh, my God, yes. We're almost sold out. We're getting down to the final few now, so we want to get them all gone,
Got to put on the push. So how do people make a reservation and or to set up for takeout or takeaway?
Well, you can pop by any time, or you can call us and we will take your credit card information and process it for you, and we'll leave the tickets at the bar for you, and you can pop in and grab them whenever or come get them the day of.
Well, I'm glad to hear you've had a flurry of action, people reserving a flipper dinner or roast beef dinner. Now let's hope this call results in a sellout.
Yes, hopefully so.
And not to pry once again, just curious, is Bill around?
Bill, we haven't seen him in a while now. I don't know. We're not quite sure. I'm pretty sure he's all right. We would have heard if there was anything wrong, but right now we haven't seen or heard from him in a while, right? So I'm just taking it on myself.
Well, good on you for picking up the slack. And if you're listening, Bill, we were just wondering how you're doing.
Yeah,
and
Bill,
good.
Bill now. Bill's a good seller too, so.
That he is. I always enjoy speaking with him. I appreciate this, Jennifer. Sell him out.
All right. Thank you very much, Patty.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye. All right. Bye-bye. The phone was breaking up a little bit there, but of course that's Royal Canadian Legion branch number 1 on Blackmarsh Road, not to be mistaken with the branch down on the boulevard. I think a lot of people think that's branch number 1, but it's absolutely not. I think it's branch 56, is it, Dave, on the boulevard down in Pleasantville? All right, check in on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Openline. You know what to do. Follow us here. Someone's asking me, if I can understand or ask why a company like World Energy GH2 and a billionaire backer like John Risley needs a loan. Well, I mean, I can't answer that question, obviously, but I think if you look around, big business, rich people, there's a reason why they're rich and the businesses are big. They take advantage of wherever they can get access to capital, whether it be borrowing on the traditional market or on the bond markets and or government monies, subsidies, grants and bursaries. That's exactly how that works. That's not to say that it's good, bad or indifferent, but the answer to the question, if I was guessing, is they got that loan and line of credit because it was available, and they took advantage of it. Let's take a break. When we come back, the Mayor of Lab City's Belinda Adams. She's next. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to the Mayor of Lab City. That's Belinda Adams. Mayor Adams, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you this morning?
Great this morning. How about you?
I'm excellent, thanks. I just wanted to do a follow-up based on the summit that we had in the last 3 days and what it meant, and to sit back this week and kind of absorb it all from a Labrador West perspective. Me personally, and I think I'll speak on behalf of our council as well, we thought it was a fabulous 3 days. and it went very well. Very humbling to see all players come to the table. In Labrador West, we enjoyed it thoroughly. The information that came out of it, the challenges that came out of it, even the good debates that came out of that was very informative, and I think that was important. The summit was about identification of the issues that have been promised and not given to Labrador West, and we get that. The summit was about building teams within all levels of government, all the key stakeholders to resolve these issues by putting pen to paper, as we discussed in my last call, with actions going forward. And that came from the low-hanging fruit, and we talked about the low-hanging fruit, the easy stuff that we can put to paper and action now that need to happen ASAP, and whatever work is needed to get that economic development plan to tie it into a sustainability plan. And that was the plan from the beginning, or that's what we had envisioned it. We have a path in Labrador West to potential more prosperity, and this will manage those social issues and take care of some of that growth in the mines for our town. Prosperity, as you know, is a flow, and we can position ourselves for prosperity in Labrador and the province and stand there with the buckets in hand, because as we learned from the economic part of the presentation is, there's big numbers coming out of the GDP just coming from IOC. I mean, $750 million coming from IOC, the GDP for the province, and, $300 million from taxpayers from that. And, we feel that's even a low number compared to the rest of Labrador. So the economics, if we can get that growth and development in Labrador West, we can go to 1.9% more growth. So from that, we need, as our MHA said, we do need the housing. We do need, better air travel, healthcare. But from that was so much more than just housing. There was good conversations on the low-hanging fruit. And I like to use the example, and I said it a couple times in the presentation. From our Arts and Culture Centre with the residents, there was a young fellow who spoke about co-op housing, and he came forth in the research he had done. That's important. And at the event, he had spoken a little bit more. And again, he felt he wasn't the person at the mic, and I commend him for stepping up to the mic. That's the residents we need to be on board, to be part of this key partnership. And the strongest word that was said in the 3 days of all political parties, all myself included, came from a 16-year-old was a 16-year-old who spoke at the summit, Leah Patterson, who did a phenomenal speech, and she's to be commended for that. The other one was from this gentleman who said when he sees on Facebook or he hears in the media or he hears people say they, he wants to rewrite the script and say I am we. It's not a they, it's an I am we, and he's not wrong. They can give us all the money for housing they want. I don't care which government is in. They can, but we can't get a builder here, can't get a developer, and we can't get someone to operate it. From that, I've had myself 5 people come forward since we've had those conversations. Ignorance is only goes so far, and then we got to educate ourselves, and that's the difference here. That was the difference this weekend for me, was trying to get that education. If you look from a travel perspective, even just to listen to Pal speak on the growing frustrations they have with the Wabush Airport and what's happening over there, stuff we didn't know, stuff we don't have time to sit and talk about. Now, from that, we've developed a couple more actions for the low-hanging fruit from that.
Such as what, Mayor Adams, when we talk about the concern of Wabush Airport, because there are certain concerns about how it's classified, whether or not it requires full-time fire protection services and what have you. So what are we talking about specifically at Wabush in the airport?
So you're absolutely right from the fire perspective. So 2 years this council went in trying to fight with different people to get the numbers, and we actually rounded up our own numbers. We had to search for that ourselves. So that came up at the summit, and there was a meeting, subsequent meeting being scheduled with Yvonne Jones, the MP, to look at that. So that was highlighted, that we need to go further. But who are the players, again, highlighting who are the players at the table to help us get there. So we did that, or that's part of it, that low-hanging fruit. We got to chase that one right away. If you look at it, very frustrating for the residents of Labrador West on travel, on delays and different things. If we had a hangar here, Powell tells us if there was a hangar in Labrador West, that would make things better. But again, step up and tell us those things that we can work on together and chase for you and help you instead of us getting frustrated. And that's part of that. If you look at the housing, from a housing perspective, when you put it up on a screen and you see how much money is out there or the potential for municipalities and developers, then you're like, oh, maybe it is. When you see the economists who put up the numbers, then people are coming saying, gee, maybe it is worth building here. It's a risk that people need to get away from right now. So, we have that risk that people won't come here to develop, but we need to develop this town. And again, I go back to it. We're not a mining town. We're a town with a mine. So I think it was a tremendous 3 days. The side conversations, it's invaluable. What came of those 3 days. There is some low-hanging fruit. We had a group there from when you incentivize to bring people to your community, whether it's doctors, whether it's developers, to do different things. There was a group, local groups, that said, from a Francophone association and indigenous groups that said, we're not included, we don't feel welcome. So there's no welcoming package. So we've decided to form a team from that and see what it looks like to welcome people to our community and see what it looks like and maybe put out that kind of thing.
Okay, so let's talk a little further on housing, because housing is going to be the linchpin for much in the way of advancement in your region. So if the thought is you can throw money at it, but unless you have people who are willing to build and operate, whether it be a long-term care facility, detached homes or whatever we're talking about, because housing means a variety of different things, if that's the case, and even access to skilled trades, so what did the conversation sound like beyond that? Because if it's not simply a matter of money and you have to try to address other things, it's hard to make someone come and build a house. It's hard to make someone come build a house and operate the whatever facility. So where to next?
Again, let's not confuse. We do need the money. There's definitely need for money there. But the step next from that is taking off the blinders and say, how can we do this together? That's the key. So if you have the money and developers are ready to go. So if you look at the Pioneer Group, who are looking from a perspective of having if you want to use it's getting that plan forward. The consultant's there, but getting that plan forward and what it looks like. If you look from a Pioneer perspective, and they've been great advocates for the seniors housing here, but there's been 2 or 3 pieces of land given to that group to go. So what holds it back? We got to keep moving. So now we got to look for a developer or an operator of that, because it also has to be affordable, right? So there's land there for the seniors. We've given them waxwing. It's a service lot. We need to get there now. How do we get it started? And that's reaching out to people and chasing people and the government as well to get that funding in place to move forward.
So, I mean, just to paraphrase what you said in the news media, now I did really appreciate the comment you made regarding we're not a mining town, we're a town with a mine, but then you went on to say, and I added, words are important, and they are, but action and action lists. So when we talk about an action list, who needs to be on that list? Who needs to be a signatory to this list? And what do you actually mean by that? Because, I suppose the fundamentals are, we set benchmarks or milestones, and we can tick them off on a predetermined time frame to see whether or not we're making any progress. So give us an example of an action list you'd like to see created.
Well, first and foremost, and I'd be remiss to not thank the Labrador West Chamber of Commerce for pulling this off, an amazing job. So from this, the Labrador West Chamber of Commerce is going to pull all this information together and give us a report. It's going to take a couple months to get that done, to this report. From a municipality standpoint, I would like to think everybody else done the same thing. From a municipality standpoint, we will have separate meetings. We've documented everything that was there in our action list and where we go with this from this low-hanging fruit. This is our thing. We will meet with Labrador Mental Health to see about doctors and where our municipality can stand to do it. We will meet with developers to see if there's infrastructure needed and what role we can play in that. The town of Labrador City is doing their part to pull this together with our council and our management team to see what that looks like, and we'll continue to do that low-hanging fruit. From that action list for us, working with our MHA to get that out there and what he needs to do for us as well, whether it's in government. So it's those lists. I would hope from that when the chamber sends that out, that everybody will take that and build their list from that, what it looks like. The first part was was identifying it, and I know people say, well, we all know the issues, but I see some focus put on it, on the travel. I see some focus put on the healthcare. I see some focus put on the housing. The power was a big one. It was a good presentation, but again, presentation doesn't go as far as the action. So what will that be? They're saying stay tuned. They have some actions in the background. So I'm hoping to get a big list of actions out of this.
No question. So, I ask this of municipal leaders all the time because I think it's going to be part and parcel with future successes. So it's one thing for the Mayor of Lab City to be working with the provincial government and the industry partners and create these action lists and create all the check boxes. But what does it mean for cooperation regionally? Because there's been a lot of standoffishness in different parts of the province. And I'm not going to make it specifically about Lab City and Wabush necessarily, but unless that level of cooperation, shared services and collaboration is part of it, then we're probably going to see a longer path to overall regional success. So your thoughts on that type of cooperation?
I do think that cooperation is necessary, but you can't stop because if it's not there. You cannot stop. You got to move forward. So I do think that cooperation and collaboration is necessary when you're in a small community like this with approximately 9,600 people, 1,600 Wabash and Lab City around 9. So. Around 8. So we do need that collaborative. When you're doing that regional approach, we need a regional economic development officer or some type like that leads us in the right direction. And I think that person then, or whether it's a task force or not, I'm not sure because there was a lot of talk on that as well, is they got to guide us then. They build that for us from a collaboration point of view for Lab West, not for Lab City and Wabash. That's the elephant in the room. People talk about Lab City and Wabash are on the same page. Regional recreation, we're ready to sign that official sheet coming up soon to finish that piece. So it's got to continue into the next step if we're going to grow Lab West. No doubt about it.
I appreciate the time and the update this morning, Mayor Adams. Anything else before I take a break for the news?
No, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Stay in touch. Bye-bye. That's Belinda Adams, the mayor of Lab City. When we come back from the newscast, Jason's going to kick it off talking about the aftermath of a house fire. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's keep going. Let's go to line number 4. Jason, you're on the air.
Good day, sir. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all.
I have a private house that is attached to a property owned by Newfoundland and Labrador Housing Corporation, which was caught on fire due to arson. And in the beginning, the management and staff at NL Housing was pretty friendly and accountable. And as time went on, they sort of disappeared and aren't returning my emails regarding all of the issues that I'm having with them. And I'm just extremely disappointed in the management and how they do things, as I've seen a lot of stuff living on the street with housing.
What kind of damage did you suffer as a result of the fire?
I can only discuss so much because it's going to be a legal matter at this time, where they don't have insurance. They can't afford their own insurance. They sort of pay out of pocket usually, and they settle with people. So that's where I'm having difficulties. It was, I'll say, relatively minor damage because there's a firewall in between the properties. So I didn't get fire damage, but there's smoke, which ruined the majority of the furniture in the property, hardwood flooring. Firefighters punched a few holes in the ceilings to check for fire. So I'm on the hook with that, and because of that, my power was cut for 3 weeks. And so the aftermath, there's a lot of stress and things out of the normal I didn't have to put up with. So I've had to rent another property while I'm paying the mortgage on this property. I'm out of pocket to pull the repairs permits, electrical permits, and to start doing some of the work. Where it was arson on their property, I'm not covered with my insurance.
That's what I was going to ask, because I've never had to purchase home insurance for a duplex, especially when you have a government entity owning one side of the property. So there's nothing specifically in your home insurance that deals with the fact that you are connected to another home and the potential whether it be they had a water leak and consequently damage your property and or a fire or anything else under the sun. So there's no specific coverage inside the world of duplexes?
Not that I know of.
Oh.
And it's been 6 months that I've been sort of fighting with my mortgage company, insurance company, and where I guess the coverage that I have just didn't cover it, where it was arson on their property. So that's where I'm sort of in a jam, and even having difficulties obtaining a lawyer because no one wants to go against Newfoundland Housing with deep pockets and all. So, yeah, I'm in a rock and a hard place with housing. As I said, they were all nice and friendly and understanding in the beginning, but now they're not even answering my emails. Even a courtesy response would have been nice. I've learned over the years, and I've done a lot of work for them through subcontracting, how they work. And obviously it's all about bottom dollar and money, which comes to the whole housing issues, where they have single people living in 3-bedroom apartments, and there's a lot of vacant housing units on this street alone. So something's got to be shaken up with the management, or something's got to be done. But I can't see what it is. So
yeah, and I don't know if they have anywhere to hide on this front, because they own and operate that particular unit. There was distinct overlap damage that affected your unit, privately held mortgage. Whether it be someone hesitant to get involved in compensation and or coverage because of an ongoing legal matter. If it was a case of arson, obviously that's going to have some implication in the courts, but there's nowhere to hide. I mean, to at least keep you in the loop, to know that regardless of the outcome of that criminal investigation, because the damage started with our unit, we will compensate you to whatever form or percentage of, I don't know, but it's pretty inconsiderate and a little bit, I was going to say dim-witted, but that's not fair. It's certainly inconsiderate and not fair for them to not keep you in the loop, because you didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think they're just relying. They just assume that my insurance is going to cover everything, but that shouldn't be the case, because it's their fault, and they know it's their fault. They were aware of this tenant and what he does, yeah, I think they're sort of covering themselves, trying to get away with as little as possible. And I've been told to be nice to them when I talk to them if I want to get somewhere, which shows me that there's sort of a union mentality or mafia style, be nice and we'll help you out kind of aspect, which I don't agree with, but that's the way the world works, I suppose. So I'm just going to have to keep on trying to fight and try and see what I can do. I mean, I'm not looking for full compensation. I was quoted $43,000 from one of the high-end renovation companies. Being a contractor, I know that it could probably be done for a lot less. But because insurance-wise, the way they do it, they charge a little bit more for their services.
Standard.
So yeah, it's just a tricky position that I got to deal with, and I'm not sure why I called you, but a bit of venting
A bit of venting is good for the soul. And hopefully something changes as a result of the call. So the department, I think it's incumbent on them to be in direct communication with you, whether or not there's an argument to be made about criminal investigations and all the rest. Well, fair enough. But if that's part of the issue here, then at least you deserve that to be told to you directly. And you're right. When you get high-end quotes, so there's probably a cheaper way to satisfy this. But hopefully something changes as a result of this call. Let me know if it does.
Now, I have known that the criminal investigation was closed very fast because of they know why it happened. There's a reason people throw a firebomb through your window. And it was a flagged unit. So they knew that the tenant wasn't. That's not my business. So yeah. Okay. Again, thank you very much. I'll if anything happens, I'll be sure to call you back and let you know.
I appreciate it. Fingers crossed there's some forward momentum here.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Take care, Jason. Good luck. Yeah, look, I mean, like most times, when there's silence, that is way worse than not getting the answer in the first place. It might not be what you wanted to hear, but it's infinitely better than simply silence on the issue. Will I get Ted here before the break, David Williams? Ted here first before the break? Okay, let's do it. Let's go to line 2. Ted, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Morning to you, sir.
Good morning. It's Ted. But it's Monday morning. Yeah, it's a hard morning. I wanted to... sometimes, I have to reach out to you for something, advice or information. I was informed the weekend. I didn't hear it on the news, but a good friend of mine told me that the Shoal Point Energy, that's a company I'm very familiar with, has got a major lawsuit out against the provincial government. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. They filed it last year. Somewhere, this is all about expropriation of land, and there's another couple of things, but the big part is expropriation of land. I think they're claiming damages of almost $500 million.
Okay, now the reason I brought that up, okay, and you know, I'm still fairly sharp upstairs, okay? 2016,
okay.
I was in, and as a matter of fact, I discussed Shoal Point Energy with you, believe it or not. I remember all the uproar down there over the fracking and the and everything there, and I remember calling Mark Jarvis. That's the gentleman that was head over the company. But that's neither here nor there, because the reason I was interested, I had nothing major, but I had money tied up in that company, and I refresh your memory. I went to into Mount Pearl, and there was something going on. I went in there with a gentleman here that was running for seeking liberal nomination here in the Arbor Main District. Okay, I just went in with him, and I remember I spoke to. There was quite a lot of liberals there at the time, because I know Seamus had just come home. I spoke to him at the door, Randy Sims, Caddy Bent, and a few more of them, right? But I got just a chance to speak to the former Premier Ball. He wasn't Premier then, he was running for to become Premier. And I brought that to Shoal Point Energy to his attention, because I had money tied up down there, you know, and I wanted to see that project go ahead. And I remember what he said to me. He said, I'll have a look at it. But that's the last I heard of it, because I think now, I did speak to Mark Jarvis one time, and found him very good. The last I heard of them, I'm not involved in that company now, I was in and out, but the last I heard of them, they're drilling down in the States. It's not Oklahoma.
It's Kansas.
Kansas is correct. They are. They're still into the, now I'm not sure if they're into the fracking in Kansas or if it's the drill, okay?
Hydraulic fracturing, they're all over it.
That's what they're into the fracking.
Yeah, they do traditional exploration and production as well, but they absolutely have been involved with hydraulic fracturing, which is a big thing in the United States. This province rejected it in full.
Yeah, they did reject it, and there was a lot of, well, I guess the people down in that particular part of the district there in western Newfoundland, I think it was, or down there somewhere, right? There was a lot of fair opposition at the time, and I called it fair-mongering, you know. And then the other day, the gentleman that mentioned to me, a good friend of mine, because he had shares in the company, I think he still has, right? So I was debating on going back in again, Paddy, you know, just on a small scale. But now with the lawsuit going on, that sort of deters me. Okay, I'm going to stand by and watch, you know. But while I'm on shortly, for a second, because I'm a bit busy myself this morning.
Me too.
Yeah, I know you are very busy. But this with the. I think I spoke to you a few there last week on the different mining things and that's going on in the province, right? You know, and things like that. And I and the minister was over to he was over the United Kingdom to a big conference there. Mr. Parsons, is it? Came back. I don't know what the results were of that meeting over there. But who's the opposition critic on natural resources in this province? I haven't got a clue.
It's Lloyd Parrott. But the issues with fracking, they've been really well understood and documented. You know, it's been directly linked with the leakage of enormous amounts of methane. It's been involved with groundwater contamination. So there are legitimate concerns with fracking and what the end result will be. It's a cheap way to get at what they call unconventional oil finds, but it has some potential problems. There's parts of the United States where they won't even allow it because of the possibility for it to instigate an earthquake. So that's not me saying it. That's just scientific research that's been pretty directly involved with understanding what hydraulic fracturing really means and the potential for odd negative outcomes. So again, that's not me. That's just the world of science and investigators. Final thoughts to you, Ted, before I do get to the break.
Well, it's only okay. Final thoughts. Switch 1 second. Tonight, Boston Bruins and Toronto Maple Leafs. That should be a good one.
Should be. I mean, both have been pretty hot. I mean, Toronto's won 9 of their last 10.
Yeah.
And the Bruins are going to be one of the toughest outs in the league again this year. But that's a good matchup, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good matchup. And before I go back to the, just for a second there.
Quickly.
I will be try to keep an update on what's going on in the province in regards to this particular lawsuit pertaining to Shoal Point Energy and our Newfoundland government, okay?
Yeah, with something that was just launched, whether it be October or November last year, that's a ways away from any sort of conclusion. But fair enough bringing it up this morning. I hadn't thought about it in a while. Good to talk to you, Ted.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad you told me, because it was a good friend of mine that brought it up. And, and like I said, all the BOCM got to do, they can reach out, no problem, to Mark Jarvis. He's a very easy man to get out there. He was at one time, I don't know about now, right?
Well, they've got an office here in the city.
I don't think so.
Well, they certainly did for the longest time. I used to remember seeing the sign. Ted, I got to get to the break, but you stay in touch.
Okay. Yeah.
All the best.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, the House of Assembly is reopening today. And, of course, they want to make some comments on the passing of the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney. That's from Tony Wakeham, the official leader of the opposition, the member for Stephenville, Port-au-Port. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Say more to the PC member for Stephenville, Port-au-Port. He's the official leader of the opposition. That's Tony Wakeham. Good morning, Tony. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. I just wanted to take time today to add my voice to those people who have on your show and others honoring the legacy of Brian Mulroney, of course, the Prime Minister of our country who passed away recently. I mean, Brian Mulroney was a nation builder who loved every province, and I would suggest none more so than Newfoundland and Labrador. And that is why he gave us that Atlantic Accord, which we all remember being signed downtown in February of 1985 when Brian Peckford, John Crosby, Pat Carney, and Bill Marshall. And that Atlantic Accord, of course, has proven to guarantee the people of Newfoundland and Labrador would be the principal beneficiary of the development of those resources, and that continues to benefit us today.
It's interesting that you added the entirety of the folks who signed on to the Atlantic Accord, because Crosby, Mulroney and Peckford get the lion's share of the applause on this front, but Pat Carney and Bill Marshall, I mean, there's an argument there to be made that Carney's the architect.
Yeah, they definitely had a huge role to play, and you and I both know the leader can take it, but it's the people behind the leader that sometimes are the people that make sure that everything gets finalized and gets done at the end of the day. And certainly Pat Carney and Bill Marshall definitely had a role to play in that as well.
And the preparations are underway for the state funeral. Details are not yet available. But, you know, when you think back, I was familiar with a lot of the issues that Brian Mulroney would have dealt with at the country's 18th Prime Minister and the last Conservative Prime Minister. I guess you have to include Kim Campbell for a few months in that position. But the list of issues that were on the table during his tenure are incredible. They're exhaustive. Now, I'm not saying that he, never made a single mistake, never put a wrong foot forward. But if you're talking about, he did indeed cancel the National Energy Programme. There was a replacement entity in place. Meech Lake, the Charlottetown Accord, privatised Petro-Canada, privatised Air Canada, the Acid Rain Treaty, the Oka crisis, the Gulf War. He created the Emergencies Act, which has been recently invoked by, of course, Prime Minister Trudeau, Environmental Protection Act, free trade, GST. I mean, this is incredible stuff when you think about it.
It is indeed, and that was the fact that he was a visionary and a nation builder, and he was not afraid to take on these very difficult decisions, these very difficult topics at the time, and be able to accomplish them and take that on, and that's a credit to his leadership and the leadership of him as a Prime Minister of our country certainly moved us along as a province.
Well, yeah, I think it's undeniable. The Atlantic Accord at the time, and maybe still to this day, one of the most important, if not the most important document and negotiation between the province and the federal government. So, yes, and when the details come forward about the state funeral, of course, we'll talk about it. And we're always welcome if people want to reflect on the life and times of Brian Mulroney. And, I was taken to task really aggressively last week when speaking about it, because I go all the way back to 72 and his job as a labour lawyer and his appointment to the Clish Commission and his clearance coming from the Oliphant Commission regarding Karl-Heinz Schreiber and the Airbus scandal. I think, when we're talking about people, and it's not speaking ill of the dead, it's an honest reflection of his life and times, reputation, and I guess consequently legacy.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what we have to do. There's always times when we don't focus just on one side of a life. We focus on his entire life, and no doubt that he had his challenges with a lot of tough topics. And that's what it is to be human. But as a prime minister, I don't think anybody can look back and say that the country of Canada and the province of Newfoundland and Labrador are not better off as a result of Brian Mulroney's leadership.
Fair enough. It's a fascinating read if you go all the way back to his university days through his tenure as the Prime Minister. And remember, with one of the architects of NAFTA, the Free Trade Agreement, brought back in by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to be involved in the renegotiation of that free trade treaty. And then when the pandemic struck and the offshore oil industry was going to be in some sort of trouble here, again, his voice was heard about federal support for the industry. So it's not like he went away after he left Ottawa either. So he's played a pretty prominent role. Would you like to say anything else on that front this morning, Tony?
Well, not on Mr. Mulroney, but I certainly wanted to speak to you because the House of Assembly, as you know, opens today, and we'll be sitting for the next number of weeks. And prior to the House opening, we took it upon ourselves to do an online engagement with people right across the province, inviting residents to submit questions about the issues they're facing, and we actually gathered hundreds of responses around the province. And these came from people from all walks of life, and of course, not surprising, the top two dominating concerns are access to health care and the soaring cost of living. And of course, we're going to go back into the House of Assembly, and we're going to continue to hold government accountable, not just on those two issues, but also on all of the other issues that are out there, whether it's education, whether it's food insecurity, mental health crime, and all of those type of issues that are important to the people of the province. And we will continue to ask the questions and ask the government and hold their feet to the fire.
Last one, Tony. So there's going to be speculation about what kind of budget we're going to see, whether or not it'll smell or feel like an election year budget. But there's two potential by-elections coming. We just went through Conception Bay, East Bell Island. Now there's going to have to be one at some point to replace Derek Bragg, the late Derek Bragg, and of course Brian Warr stepping away. So, preparation is always going to be key inside your district associations and the search for candidates. Have people come forward that are looking to be the PC candidate on either of those ballots? Because you never know when they might be called.
Absolutely. There are people that are looking to step up, but as you said, it's the timing of those, and there is some questions being asked, of course, as to whether or not the Premier will actually not call by-elections, but call a snap provincial election. I mean, that would be something that is not unheard of from this Liberal government. The mandate is to fix election date of 2025, but clearly, the Liberal governments in the past have chosen to ignore those fixed election dates. But we will be ready, whether the Premier calls by-elections or whether he calls a general election. Throughout
the various sittings this year, how many days does it add up to? Because if memory serves, it was 39 days last year in total, which, I guess there's an argument about how much work actually gets done while the House is open and the members are sitting. So with the schedule this year, do we know how many days are on the schedule?
Well, right now, we are sitting approximately a little over 30 days, I believe it is. I don't know the exact number, but I will say that it's never enough. One of the biggest frustrations I find in being elected as an MHA and coming to the House of Assembly is the fact that we do not spend enough time in debate. And the way we debate, in fact, the idea of getting advance notice about legislation that's going to be introduced, and whether that's 24 hours or whether that's 48 hours or in advance, what we need to be doing if we're truly going to be effective as a government and as an opposition is that we need time to research when new legislation is being proposed, and we need time to make sure we get it right. We've seen the fiascos that have happened with this Liberal government in terms of not just the legislation piece, but the decisions they make when it comes to things like the ride sharing, for example, and those type of things. And now today, in the Evening Telegram, there's an article, and the headline is, "We're not going to respond to any more pay equity questions." And that came from an official with the Department of Women and Gender Equality official. Well, I've got a message for the Department of Women and Gender Equality. You may not be going to respond to any more pay equity questions, but that's not going to stop us from asking them, because that type of arrogance, there is no place for that when it comes to the House of Assembly or when it comes to the people of the province wanting answers to legitimate questions that they're asking. And that's got to stop. We need to be in the House of Assembly much longer. We need to go, and in my humble opinion, I think we need to move to committee structures. I think we need to, we've talked about it in the past during estimates about bringing in the Crown agencies, people like Memorial University and the health authorities, and having them go through that estimate process just like departments do. All of those things need to happen. If we're truly going to be accountable for people's money, then let's not be afraid to do this. Let's not be afraid to open up the House longer. Let's not be afraid to have more debate, and let's not be afraid to have all of those issues addressed in the House of Assembly.
Fair enough. Last one, I want to bounce back to the passing of Brian Mulroney. Of course, we say the last Conservative Prime Minister, but of course the last Progressive Conservative Prime Minister, which I think there's a distinct difference. Upon the decimation in 1993, it basically led to years of infighting, if not all-out civil war inside the party, and now what we see is now this new Conservative Party, which is a monumental change from the Mulroney days. So what's your party's relationship with your federal counterparts? I think it's undeniable when you look at the provincial and federal Liberals. I think the same could be said for the NDP. Not so sure we understand the relationship and your thoughts about the leader or what have you on the federal front. So what do you say to that question?
Again, I've always pointed out that we are the Progressive Conservative Party of Newfoundland and Labrador, and we stand to represent the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. There are lots of policy differences between the Conservative Party of Canada and the Progressive Conservative Party of Newfoundland and Labrador. But having said that, there are lots of things that we share a common interest in. The idea of elimination of the carbon tax and those type of things, affordable housing, and the other things, protection of our offshore oil, and a commitment to ensure that as long as the world needs oil, we continue to provide that oil. Those are some of the things that Pierre Poilievre has stood up and talked about, and those are things that Newfoundland and Labrador can support. When it comes to all of the policies, no, we have our own policies. We are our own party. But we will work with anyone who's elected Prime Minister of this country, and that's what we intend to do.
Appreciate the time, Tony.
Okay.
Take care.
Buddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Tony Wakeham, PC member for Stephenville Port of Port, the leader of the official opposition. Let's take a break for the news. How are we doing out there, David? All right, don't go away.
Nutrition, exercise, keeping the cold at bay. Whatever keeps you feeling great, the Wellness and Healthy Lifestyle Show on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number one. Steve, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
So I'm calling about the issue with the daycare my kids go to and the tattoo shop next to it.
That call is on my afternoon list today, Steve.
Yeah, well, they just called me and told me to get on the ready to speak to you.
Oh, they did? Okay. Okay, so let's just paint the picture here. The daycare is alongside this tattoo shop, and they're smoking out in front, which is in very close proximity to the daycare where your children go, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's, the daycare has two main doors, I guess, for different age groups, and the tattoo parlor is kind of like in the lot right in the middle.
Okay.
And there's no smoking signs that are put up. They're in clear view. They walk a few feet from the sidewalk of the door, and then they smoke with their. There's like a playground outside in the parking lot, and there's a wooden fence going around it. And they actually, my wife has seen them smoking with their back leaning up against like that fence where the kids are playing, smoking. My wife told me she's spoken to them. She was told to F off. I've been told that the owner of the daycare has...
Not sure what happened there. I drop on Steve's end. So let's see if we can get it back. We've heard that the provincial government has installed these buffer zones around schools and public buildings about smoking or vaping or smoking marijuana. The question has always been, who's going to enforce it? So there's already security there at the doors at, say, for instance, the Confederation building. So if you're not allowed to smoke on property, period, and I think that's the entirety of the parking lot as well. So, the extreme end of the parking lot of Confederation building is well away from any of the exits or entrances. So who's actually enforcing it? Schools, hospitals, government-owned buildings, because that's been in place for a while. And I would imagine if you drove through one of those parking lots a day, you may indeed see someone actually lighting up. So that's the question. Well, let's see if we can rejoin Steve on one. Steve, you're back on the air.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Sorry, my wife's phone died.
No problem.
So, I've been told that the staff and the owners of the daycare have asked the staff to stop smoking there. And they're told to F off. Apparently it's the owner, too, that's getting out the same shenanigans.
Well, it's a fair question, and I was going to say confrontation, but that's not the right word. If there's no smoking signs, for the obvious reasons that we're talking about the daycare in the area, so it's just unfortunate that you're being received so harshly with just a very fundamental request.
I mean, if it was my tattoo parlor, I would just ask staff and customers to go out. I mean, these buildings all have a back door. I mean, they have to. So, I mean, I know some of the staff at the daycare will actually walk down to the next parking lot over just to be out of reach. Like I said, if I owned the spot, I would just ask the staff to smoke out back, just out of sight,
Well, it'll certainly be better than what's currently in place, that's for sure.
Well, definitely. And I said I don't really know what other actions they're going to take. I mean, I've spoken to the management of the building. I know there's as many kids that go there. So I'm just wondering, how bad is it got to be before something's done?
And it's a fair question to be asking. I'm going to make that call, as I told you I would last Friday. This afternoon, there's a dozen calls on my list, and that's one of them.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for your time.
I appreciate yours, Steve. Thanks a lot.
If it persists, can I reach out again?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Take care.
Bye.
Right, bye-bye. Yeah, I mean, it's long been a concern people talk about, right? You're going to the hospital, whether it be for your own appointment or to visit a friend or a family member. And, there was a long time where you walk through a pretty heavy cloud of smoke out by the door. So the argument is, set up a smoking section far afield, and then there's going to be pushback saying, well, people who are patients and mobility issues, what have you. But the smoke at the front of the schools and the doors at the health sciences in particular, I guess is probably similar, could be said, down at St. Clair's. But so if you've been in and out of any of these buildings, hospitals or otherwise, and have seen the smoking take place, because it's one thing to put a policy in place that says you can't smoke here and you can't smoke there, but unless there's actually somebody enforcing it, then who's to say that anyone's abiding by these so-called policies that are in place? All right, let's check the Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Oh, do we know what the big infrastructure announcement was after all? Because I've been a little bit busy. I haven't been following along, but anyway. Made mention off the top of the show this morning regarding some of the chaos that took place out of the Cornerbrook Hospital last week when travel nurses were taken off the unit, and consequently the nurses that were not in place to take on the shift, and so they were told, now your shift today is 21 hours. And some of that lack of communication between Canadian Health Labs and NL Health Services, but we have now been told that NL Health Services confirms the contract with Canadian Health Labs on the West Coast is now out. Let's see, I'm going to be sure I get that right here, because there was a lot of confusion. Yeah, it has been expired. It has expired in the Western Zone and will not be renewed. Okay, so what does that mean for actual nursing staffing levels? Is it going to remain in place where the registered nurses are going to have to work the mandated overtime? Because the contract ended on the 28th of February, and there were still travel nurses up to that date. But I guess the question is, did NL Health Services understand what was going to happen on the 28th of February? And if so, how come the nurses weren't told that beginning that day there was going to be some mandated overtime shifts? Because apparently it came out of nowhere. Let's take our final break in the morning. Still some time for you to sneak onto the program if you're in and around town. 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. We're taking a break and then we're coming back. Welcome back to the program. Well, in discussion with Tony Wakeham, talking about the fact that the House is indeed reopening today, and the question was how many days they're going to sit this year in the parliamentary calendar for 2024. Last year it was 39 days. Paul Lane, the independent member from Mount Pearl Southlands, sent along this year's calendar, and by my very quick count, it looks like 48 days of sitting this year, which is obviously better, but it does beg some questions as to, how few days are actually spent in the House of Assembly, because there's sometimes that we've seen issues that have been discussed, proposed legislation, but yet regarding the few days that they do sit, that some of the people's business does not get attended to in a timely fashion, which is no good for anyone. Now, we'll find out in short order exactly what the temperature is in the House of Assembly. And of course, there's always going to be some quote-unquote heated debate. But the speculation surrounding the timing of potential by-elections and, or as Mr. Wakeham referred to it, the possibility of a snap call of a general election, we'll see. So there's still some things left to be understood there. Very quickly, based on some comments off the top of the program this morning, understanding the National Pharmacare Plan. So I didn't say, nor do I think that it's a bad idea. We're the only country in the G7 or any country that's a member of the OECD that has universal health care without universal pharmacare. And in this case, the questions, though, that I pose to provoke conversation is if it's going to have a staggered approach. The initial plan is about $1.5 billion in cost to cover diabetic or diabetes medication and contraception. The question, based on some of the ongoing negotiations, is, number one, we wonder what this province's stance is on it, how some of the proposals are going to work with what we have going in this province. For instance, like in diabetes medication, we have an insulin pump program. How does this dovetail with the national plan? Secondly, to provoke conversation, was the fact that some provinces have already said they don't want to participate. And in this case, it's Alberta and Quebec. And their basic summaries show me the money. If we can enhance our own programs that are currently in place, and that, if there was a show me the money, would have come with caveats that said, well, the money has to be spent on X, Y, or Z. They say, so as opposed to enhancing our own programs and eliminating some additional federal bureaucracy, isn't that a way to play it? It's a fair conversation to be had, because we still don't really know how some of this is going to work, very much like we don't know exactly how the National Dental Care Program works, because there's still some confusion. Not because I say so, but because dental associations are saying so across the country. We're not even sure how many providers, whether it be hygienists or denturists or dentists themselves, are going to sign up to participate, and yet that's supposed to begin in May. Anyway, let's get another one before we run out of time. Let's go to line number one. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy.
Hi there.
Good morning to you.
Good morning to you as well.
Been a while since I spoke to you, and I had an accident up in Placentia Bay there a few years ago. But anyway, that's not the case now. I'm calling because I had bought a little car there a while back in September. I guess a Ford Escape. Okay. And all of a sudden I have an antifreeze line leak going into the turbocharger. I had her into 3 garages, and they verified that it was leaking in the line. But anyway, I decided to put her into a reputable car dealership on Kimmound Road. And they did some tests on it and said it wasn't the antifreeze line, it was the eye line. Whatever, it cost me $391 to get this checked out, and not all on that. It was a call back on my car, so they fixed the transmission line bushing, I think it was. But anyway, put in a couple of screws on a loose shield that was there, and did the test on that line, and there was 1.9 hours labor, which was outrageous altogether, I suppose, whatever it is. But anyway, it was a misdiagnosis by the company of the leak, where it was to, or whatever it is. I'm after losing 2 gallons of antifreeze now since I bought her in September, and it's coming out in my driveway. And I got a hold to the main company on the mainland just to tell them about it, that what I had been gypped in here. And he called the foreman in that shop, and in the chat with him, he told him that you can't. It's difficult to differentiate between the color of antifreeze, which is yellow, green, or oil leak. Now, I haven't had no oil change on that car since I bought her in September. She's not down. She's not low on oil or anything, but I keep putting the antifreeze in her. And my beef is that I'm out $400. That's $391 as the whole thing, and for a misdiagnosis, and they're not going to do anything about it. And I don't know, if you're going to be able to help me or not, but I just wanted to get this out. What can happen to you?
Well, like they say, the two most important professionals to have in your corner are an accountant and a mechanic, for obvious reasons. So you were told that they had a problem differentiating between the color of antifreeze and the color of oil?
Well, that's what he told the guy on the mainland. The head office up there, whatever it was, he called into them just to see what was going on. And that's what he said. It's hard to tell the difference of the color of antifreeze and motor oil. So when I called him about that last week there, I guess I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday, he said, I didn't say that at all. And I said, well, you better get a hold to the guy on the mainland and just explain to him what you did say, or tell him that he was lying or whatever, because exactly the words that he told me was that. So, and I didn't get anywhere with the company here. Didn't get anywhere at all. I was trying to get a hold of Consumer Affairs to... It's not only that, it's the cost that I had to pay for absolutely nothing. For the misdiagnosis is my big concern.
Yeah, and fair enough. So Consumer Affairs, basically for these types of complaints regarding those business interactions, happens at Service NL, that government department. So that's where you went to file a complaint?
No, I didn't. I can't get a hold of anybody.
It should be easy enough to do it. I can maybe get you a number here quickly. Service NL. All right. So the main number, actually, let's see if I can dig in a little further and go for consumer protection. Consumer advisories, alerts, consumer protection. All right, here we go. So the overview. They don't give a specific number out for Consumer Affairs, but that's exactly where you have to go, is the Department of Service NL at the provincial government, and I'm sure there's got to be a number here at the bottom. The basic number to contact that department in general is 709 729 4834.
4834.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a problem before with a car one time, and it's a long time ago. But anyway, that and the Better Business Bureau, I guess I called, and they gave me the number for something at that time. It's back about 10, 12 years ago or more, I suppose. I had a problem with a motor, whatever it is. They had to replace it on the end anyway, but. That's I want to be very thankful to you for this now, Patty, because but you're a book of knowledge on anything at all, so I figured you were the best guy to get a hold of. But I don't know if I can get anywhere with it now until I get a hold of Consumer Affairs.
Yeah, give it a shot anyway. It's worth filing your concern with them. And they also have a very simple email address if you use email. It's servicenlinfo and at the Gov's suffix, which is at gov.nl.ca.
Yeah, same as all of them, really.
That's right.
It's whatever, But anyway, thanks again.
My pleasure. Let me know if you have any luck.
I will do.
Okay.
Thanks,
Take care. You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, good show to kick off the week, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.